In C++, we have two other built-in data types. One of them is char for storing a single character. The other is string for storing a sequence of characters. Let's see them in action. So let's declare a char variable called ch, and we set this to single quotes, and in between the quotes we type a character. Now, just like booleans, these characters are internally represented using numbers because computers don't understand characters. They only understand numbers, and more accurately, binary numbers. So every character has a numeric representation. Let me show you. So if we use cout to print ch, we see the actual character. But if you want to see the underlying number, there is a trick. We can put a plus sign just before our variable, and this tells the compiler to treat this as a number. Now, let's run our program one more time. There you go. So 97 is the numeric representation of lowercase a. Now, what if we change this to b? We get 98. So every character has a numeric representation. And that means over here, instead of assigning this variable to a character, we can use the numeric representation of this character, which is 98. Now, if we remove the plus sign and just print the actual character, we see the letter B. Now, even though this works, this is not a good way to write code because someone else looking at this code, they have no idea what 98 represents. So just because C++ allows you to write code like this doesn't mean you should. So let's change this back to the letter B. Good. So this is all about the char type. Now let's look at the string type. Using the string type, we can store a sequence of characters. So here we can declare a variable called name and set it to double quotes. So with double quotes, we can represent a sequence of characters, which we call a string. Here we can set this to Mosh Hamedani and then print it on the terminal. That's what we get. Pretty easy. Now, we can also read strings from the terminal. And this is very useful because we can ask the user their username, their password, and so on. So let's see this in action. So I'm going to remove the initialization of this variable. Instead, we're going to print a label like enter your name. Then we use cin to read the user's name. And finally, we print a message like hi with a space followed by the user's name. Let's see how this works. So if I type Mosh, we get hi Mosh. But if I type Mosh Hamedani, we still get hi Mosh. Why is that? Well, because by default, if you have a space, everything after the space, including the space, is ignored. But what if we want to read a string that has a space in it? Well, there is another way to do that. So instead of reading that string using cin, we're going to use a function called getLine, which is defined in the std namespace. So if you haven't included this namespace on the top, we have to call this like this. Okay? Now we can use the shorthand syntax. So we call the getLine function and give it two values or two arguments. The first one is our input stream, which is what? cin. The second argument is our string variable, which is name. Now we can remove this line and let's run our program one more time. So if we enter Mosh Hamedani, we get hi Mosh Hamedani back. Now, as your exercise, I want you to write a program that asks the user a series of questions like street, city, state, and zip code, and then prints the user's address using this format. This is how we display addresses in the US. So pause the video, spend a couple of minutes on this, then come back see my solution. All right, to solve this problem, we need a few string variables. So string street, city, state, and zip code. Now, some people like to declare all their variables first and then use them. But the common best practice these days is to declare a variable close to its usage. This makes our code easier to read and understand. So first, we're going to work with the street variable and forget about the other variables for now. So right after we declare this variable, we print a label, street. Now, because a street can contain spaces, here we cannot use cin to read the street. Instead, we should use the getLine function. So we pass CN and street. Okay. Then we add a line break to separate these three lines, which are all about something, from the other lines, which are about something else. So now we work with the city variable. One more time. First, we print a label, city, and then using getLine, we read the city. Again, we have a line break to separate these three lines or this story from other stories. Okay? Now, let's repeat with the state. And one more time, we read the state using cin and state. And finally, we read the zip code. Okay? So getLine, cin, and zip code. Now the final part. We need to format the address. So we use cout. First we print the street. Then we add a new line. Now on the second line, first we print the city. Next we add a comma with a space, followed by the state, and another comma and a space, and finally the zip code. That's all you had to do. Let's run the program and make sure it works. So street is going to be Santa Monica Boulevard, city Los Angeles, state of California, and zip code I don't remember. Okay, this is how our address gets formatted. Beautiful.